Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Mindful Musings, Radical Joy. I'm Nancy Wang.
I'm Robert Kikuchi-Yngojo.
And we are Eth-Noh-Tec. And we are here today with some very special friends. Laura Simms, who is our storyteller all the way from New York, and Sara deBeer, somewhere in Virginia right now, though from Connecticut. And then we have a few of our Asian American storytellers and action tellers as well. So I don't think that we need to go exactly a lot about what we're going to be coming up to in 2025. And we already have experienced the trauma of the recent election and what's come after that. And so what we have to do is to create really safe space with each other. We have to create community. And it is our hope that today, in the next hour or so, that we will open the gates to radical joy. So let me just kind of bear with me these dictionary descriptions. Radical is related to proceeding from a root. Joy is different than happiness, is a kind of bliss, and is a source, a root of our being that makes life worthwhile. Joy is vital for life. Joy allows us to carry on despite our circumstances. And so we hope that we can find our inner source of joy, and so that you can carry it on into 2025 and beyond. And of course, what would bring us joy is to donate also to Eth-Noh-Tec so that we can pay our tellers and our assistants, so that we can keep bringing this program to you. So Brittany will put the link in the chat. So shall we begin? I think so. All right, I think first of all is Sara deBeer, who is a poet and a storyteller, and a very fine poet who does wonderful, funny poems and meaningful poems about her life and about everyone else's life. So, Sara, take it away.
To unmute myself, I got a little message. I couldn't get rid of the message. So Nancy told me about this. I've been telling stories since the 1980s, and my true love, my monogamous relationship with stories is traditional folk tales. So when Nancy told me of this, I thought of this British folk tale. And after you hear it, I think you'll understand why this particular story came to mind. There was once a woman who had spent her life going in from her little cottage to the village of Headley and cleaning people's homes. That was the work she did when she was young. She continued to do it with all her strength. The only thing that changed as she got older was that people began to give her advice about how to do the work she had done all her life. And they would, toward the end of the day, say, "Oh, you have to get on your way. We don't want you to meet up with the Headley Coo." For the Headley Coo was a shape-shifting creature that got great delight in driving human beings crazy. And they said it had such power, such shape-shifting powers, that it was able to make itself look like two beautiful young women, and it led two young men astray in the swamp. But she was not afraid of this creature. And one evening when she was scrubbing the floor and the woman at the house said, "You have to get going. It's getting to be dusk. You don't want to meet up with the Headley Coo." She thought, "I've started this job and I'm going to finish it." And finish it she did. And so it was that she began walking down the road toward her cottage. And it was a little hazy, a little hard to see in front of her. And she saw on the side of the road a large shape. And as she got closer, she could see that it was an iron pot. And she thought to herself, now there's a strange thing. Why would someone leave an iron pot by the side of the road? Well, surely folks get rid of things that I can often find a use for. Perhaps it has a hole in it, but I could put flowers in it. And so she went right up to it and she grabbed hold of the cover and she opened it up to see if it did have a hole. But then her eyes got wide. It didn't have a hole, no. It was filled to the top with gold coins. She looked both ways. There was no sign of anyone. And she said to herself, well, finders, keepers. And she went to pick it up. She was strong from all that hard work, but she couldn't quite get it up as it needed to be. And so she took up her shawl and she tied it in a way she knew around the pot and went on down the road. And as she walked, she was imagining, oh, those red flannel petticoats people talk of. I could buy myself one and I could replace the chipped teapot and whoa, is all that gold? I could get some chickens. I'd have my own eggs. I could get a cow. I could get a cow. Or maybe what I need to do is bury it all into the backyard of my cottage except for one coin. And I could put that coin up on my mantle. And when I begin to worry about how I'm going to get by if I can't work, I'll look up at that coin and I will know I have plenty to keep me healthy and well. But it was a lot of work to drag that pot of gold. And so she stopped and turned to take another look at that pot of gold while she caught her breath. Well, she looked again. She thought, I must have been working far too hard this evening because I could have sworn that was a pot of gold, but look there, it's a bar of silver. Well, aren't I lucky? Look at what was starting to happen to me, becoming so greedy. I talked about bearing gold in my backyard. I don't want to be that kind of person. But a bar of silver, well, that will give me many of the things I've always longed for, but I won't have more than everybody else. And she put the shawl back over her shoulder. On down the road she went. She got a little out of breath and she decided to stop and look back at that bar of silver. But it was not a bar of silver. It was just a big hunk of iron. Well, aren't I lucky? I would have had a terrible time explaining that how I'd found a bar of silver by the side of the road. What a hunk of iron. That's nothing to explain. People find hunks of iron around and I can sell it for a few pennies. And the truth is, pennies are happier than silver or gold. Pennies come easier and they go easier. When she put the shawl back on her shoulder and went on down the road, she got right up to her gate of her house and she took it down. She went to open her gate. She gazed down into her shawl. It was not a pot of gold. It was not a bar of silver. It was not a hunk of iron. It was just a big round stone. Oh, aren't I lucky? Look at that stone. That's the very thing I've been needing to keep my gate closed tight so the animals don't get in and taste my vegetables when they're not supposed to. But if I'd known it was a stone all that time, I don't think I would have brought it here. But it couldn't be better to make me comfortable. And she leaned down to pick up the stone and put it up against the gate. But as soon as she touched the stone, she felt it change from being hard to soft. And it sprang up on four legs and sprouted a horse's head and a horse's tail and it went running off. And she looked after it with the enormous smile on her face and she said, well, aren't I lucky? That must have been the Headley coup. And not even the parson has ever seen it. And she couldn't have been any happier if she were the queen of all the kingdoms of the world.
Oh, Sarah, that was wonderful and so instructive for us about being happy. Wow.
Being present for all the events that happen and
And
circumstances.
grateful. Yeah. Oh, it was lovely. Thank you. So, you know what I think we should do now is maybe have a little bit of a discussion before we have me and Robert and Laura tell the other stories. Because this is part of what Eth-No-Tec likes to do anyway. We like to discuss things and talk and share. So, what I'd like you to do is think about this prompt. When is a time that you were happy? And Sarah is going to explain how we will call on you.
Well, many of you on Zoom know that there's a way to put up a virtual hand and it moves you right up to the upper left-hand corner of the screen so we know to call on you wherever you might be hiding. So if you want to check the lowest part of your screen, there should be something that says reactions. For some people, there's a thing that says more. If you click in the reactions, you can see that there's a heart. So I'm going to invite everybody to click on the heart, and then we can fill the screen with radiant joy. And you can also show me you found where the place is that says raise hand. So let's see some more hearts there. Oh, look at all those wonderful hearts.
Great.
So now, please give a look as for the raised hand. And we know some of you have something to share about a time of happiness, a time of joy, or even if I can give an extra little twist to the prompt, if there's someone that woman reminded you of who's full of joy, maybe you could share a little bit about that as well. I'm not sure how to say your name. Vibha?
Viva.
Viva.
Oh, please share with us.
That's Viva's close enough. Well, I'm in Hawaii and I have studied Ho'oponopono. And what this story reminds me of is the difference between pono, which is being in rightness with whatever happens, or pilikia, the trauma and drama. So we can't control what life gives us, like all the different things she got, but we can choose to be in pono or pilikia. And if she had gone into pilikia, oh no, I lost my gold. Oh, what happened? But she stayed in pono. She stayed in rightness with whatever happened. And that's how she kept her joy. So to me, it was a reinforcement that we have a choice. We can't control what life brings us, but we have a choice of whether we want to go into the pilikia the drama, the disappointment, or to be in rightness. And if we stay in rightness, we keep our joy. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for the story and the reminder to stay in Pono.
Yes.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that insight. I often ask myself, can I channel a little more of that woman?
Yeah.
And Janet, and of course, if we'd love to see a few more people come up and make space for each person in not talking a long time. Of course, that's not. So go ahead, Janet.
Well, I want to share the happiness I've just had over the last few days. My daughter came up to visit me, and she's been away in Boston for a long time, and now she's back she's in San Francisco, but she came up to Portland to visit me, and it was just so nice. And I think what I want to say is that I'm happy when I'm grateful. So this time when my daughter visited, we didn't make it big plans. I had wanted to take her to the beach, but the forecast was for rain all the day she was going to be here. So I said, we cancel the beach. So we just hung out, and it was lovely when there was some just downtime and she came and laid down in my lap. So we never know, when the happiness will come, but being open, and being grateful for, it does not have to be big things. It can be just very small things. Spending time with my daughter made me happy, and I reflected on being grateful for all the time we had together.
Well, I'm so grateful that you shared that insight with us. Thank you, Janet. And Lori, what could you share with us?
My first job was in computing, and it really got my brain going, and I earned a lot of money. When I turned 50, I realized all my life I had wanted to teach. And so I quit my high-paying computer job, and I began to teach high school mathematics at less than a third of my salary, with two of my children in college. I can't tell you how much joy and wonder and excitement and beauty I got from teaching high school students mathematics. And the money didn't matter. No, it was such a joy.
You're filling this whole space with that joy as you speak of it. Thank you so much, Lori. We'd love to hear from one or two more people if there's anyone else who has.
Well, I can just make that there is a difference between joy and happiness. So happiness is often fleeting, but joy is like something that is rooted in us and can be just ongoing. It's a source. So I just thought there's times when you felt happy, and then there are times when you absolutely experienced joy or someone else's joy you saw.
Yeah, joy is a way of being, and happiness happens to you. It's almost external in that way.
Well, it starts that way, but you feel it. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear as you share.
Is there one or two other people who have a thought to share with the rest of us?
And it's okay if you don't, because we have some great stories coming up, and that might get you feeling again.
Oh, Ravi. Please.
Oh, Ravi.
Yeah, sorry, my lights are off. I don't know if you can see me. Yes, I love these stories and these examples from people's lives where people found joy. I think I define, actually have a little different way. I define happiness as greater capacity and confidence to deal with distress, and that builds the foundations for joy. Joy is essential as part of that capacity to deal with distress. So yeah, I think that kind of helps me navigate that. There's always some distress, small, large, personal, impersonal, all of that. But developing capacity and cultivating joy helps us. And I think happiness is something that's a product of that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Robbie, it's great to hear that each of us have slightly different ways of understanding joy and happiness and the way they interrelate. And that was wonderful to have a chance to hear your perspective. Megumi.
I love this discussion. Thank you for defining joy as coming from the root. I'm in several recovery programs, like Alcoholics Anonymous and such. And some of us are recovering, as in, we have this innate ability to love. And I think from what you're saying, Nancy, how you define joy, we have joy within us. And it's a matter of tapping in, definitely cultivating it. But I think for a long time, I had forgotten about joy in the busyness of trying to survive, or in the busyness of trying to meet other people or societal expectation with like grades or salaries. So I'm a recovering person who is recovering joy. Thank you.
As you were speaking, I was also thinking about discovering and uncovering and recovering. There's just, and then the opening up that pot and seeing all the gold coins, Thank you, Megumi.
All right, I think we should move on. I think we will now have a story or stories from Laura Simms, who is one of my favorite storytellers. So just marvelous, deep and loving. So take it away, Laura.
Thank you. I love this conversation. And I was talking about joy. I was working in Haiti a couple of months after the earthquake in 2010. And I was working for International Medical Corps, and we were going up into a tent where health workers that I was training would get to watch me tell stories to mothers and children. It was a veritable mountain of rubble that we climbed up. And when we entered the tent, the IMC people put down fresh, clean rugs, and there were buckets of water at the door. And then women with their children began to come in. They'd wash their feet, they'd wash their hands, they'd dip their children in the buckets. But the women fell against the tarp, just in utter exhaustion. And the children crawled in these nice, clean blankets in the middle and fell asleep. So I, of course, did not know what to do. I felt completely inadequate to this situation. But the translator said, Laura, tell a story. So I told one or two folk stories, and an occasional child peeked up and then went back to sleep. So at one point, I just said, I heard a great Haitian story, and maybe you know it, because I didn't hear the whole thing. About a red fish named Taizan. And suddenly a voice from one of the women, Taizan, mon ami Taizan. And then somebody else sang. And soon, everybody was singing this song that they knew from their childhood. And I told a little bit of the story, and then they told the rest of the story. And then they argued amongst themselves about which episode went when, and they had voices. And suddenly all the women were sitting up and the children were in the center, sort of very perky. And then to model for my students I was working with, I asked them questions about their lives, and they started telling stories about their life. The hour sped by. And then it was over, and everybody stood up And all of a sudden, one woman, she said, attends, attends, to everyone, wait. And she said, Laura, you did not make our lives better. You didn't change our situation. I thought, she said, but in this hour, we remembered that we have joy. And for me, that was everything I had to know to continue working. And it reminded me of an Inuit story, which I'm going to really condense to tell you, but it's a wonderful story. The Inuit are the people in Alaska who we call Eskimo. And there was a mother, father, and 3 sons. They lived very far from everything. And there was a time when they knew no one, they were hungry, there was no food, no water. And the eldest son said he was going to go and he was going to hunt. And he left. He walked way out into the tundra and stopped in the icy cold. And above him, he saw an eagle circling. And then the eagle alighted next to him, and the eagle turned into a young man, same size, and said, would you come and help my mother? If you do, she will give you the greatest gift. Her eldest brother said, yeah, we're hungry, I'm a hunter, I've no time for this. He left, man turned back into an eagle. That eldest son never returned home. The same thing happened with the middle son. So when the youngest son said, I'm going to go and find food and see if I can find my brothers, mother and father said, please, we've lost both children. But he insisted, he made the same journey. He went to the same place. And there he saw an eagle circling, alighted on the tundra, turned into a man and said, would you help my mother? If you do, she will give you the greatest gift. And he said, of course I will go. And the man said, you know, it's good. Your 2 brothers refused. So man turned back into a bird. Youngest son climbed. They soared, they soared, they soared, they soared up into the sky. Above the clouds, there was a great mountain. And on the top of the mountain, there was a lodge. And the youngest son heard a sound. He said, what is that? And the eagle man said, that's my mother's heart beating. She's so glad you've come. But when they went into the lodge, she was so old, so thin, her feathers so ragged, her beak twisted. And she said, I'm so glad you've come. If you do these 3 things that I will describe, I will give you the greatest gift. I will give you the gift of joy, and you will not know hunger. So first, he learned how to make a ceremonial house. He built it with the eagle man. He learned to make a drum. He learned to play the drum and sing and dance. And then he came back, and eagle mother said, that's good. Now you go back home and you build a ceremonial house. Invite everyone to dance and feast and sing, tell stories. The youngest son said, we don't know anybody. Eagle mother said, this is the problem with you human beings. You have forgotten celebration. If you do all the things that I have shown you, then people will come. There will be joy. He thanked her, left, flew back down, You know, the mother and father were really glad to see him. And they all built a ceremonial house. They made a drum. They practiced dancing, singing, telling stories until the words rose up like bubbles from beneath the sea with beauty. And you know, people came. And then they feasted and danced night after night. And when the celebration was over, all those people went to the door, leaned down one by one, they turned into four-legged animals and scattered into the distance. But the truth is that after that, there was always food. Many people came to live. They were never alone. They were not thirsty. And they had celebration. And after a time, the two brothers returned. Well, the youngest son said one day, you know, I'm going to go and thank Eagle Mother. He made the same journey. There was the eagle soaring above him, landed, turned into a man. Youngest son said, I would like to thank your mother. So they made the same journey. And you know, this time, the sound of Eagle Mother's heart was loud. And when he entered the lodge, he said, Eagle Mother, I have come to thank you. And Eagle Mother came forward. My friends, she was young and beautiful. And she said, now, I have given you the greatest gift, the gift of joy, and you will never know hunger. And that's that story.
Ah, yes, thank you. Thank you, Laura. Yes, and not just he will never experience hunger for his stomach, but hunger for love and hunger for friendship, hunger for celebration. He will never be hungry because it will be there. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. So we will go on with our story now and then come back to you. So
We gotta do a little techno switcheroo, so
Yeah.
Nancy will leave over there. And take this with you, Nancy.
Oh, okay. And
Set
do
up.
you have sound on? So this is a story. Am I being heard? Robert?
Yeah, Laura
Okay.
can hear you.
Okay.
You're
This
being
is-
heard.
Okay, thank you. So this is a story, one of my favorites that we do. And maybe many of you have heard and seen it before, but in context with what we're trying to do in this hour of creating community of joy so that we can move through the next year. It is called The Bird of Happiness.
And a story from Tibet.
Is there a black one?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now,
Oops.
and now, the bird of happiness. Ngamo, 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 ngamo. Once upon a time in the land of Tibet, the people had forgotten happiness. Forgotten happiness. Oh, they were a miserable people in a barren land where barely a blade of grass would grow, hardly any water would flow, and the people shivered in their huts as the cold wind would blow. So you can imagine in such terrible poverty that happiness was easily lost. But there was some, perhaps like you, that still believed in happiness, and they believed that if happiness lived, it was alive. As a bird of happiness, a bird of happiness.
Is there really a bird of happiness?
That was Wanja. The young girl was always asking questions of the heart. She consulted the wise man. Yes, Wanja, there's a bird of happiness that's far away on a snow-capped mountain peak.
Oh, can you see it, chase it, catch it?
Oh, you cannot chase after happiness. No, the bird of happiness will only come to you in a quiet moment when your heart is still.
Oh, that's easy.
No, not easy. For the bird of happiness is guarded by monsters. 3 long-bearded creatures whose icy breath can sniff out a man's life. Oh, many men have tried. Many men have died. Their hearts were not pure.
Oh, well, if I could just see the bird of happiness, why, I could tell the people what the bird looked like, and then maybe they would believe in happiness again. I'm going to find the bird. Farewell.
And so, with the blessing of the wise man, Wanja began her journey. Into the hills she climbed, up into the mountains she walked. For many days she walked and walked. And one morning, the mist began to lift, and there before her was a snow-capped mountain peak. Suddenly, a whirl of snow and dust whipped all around her, and when her eyes opened, there before her was a shaggy monster with a long black beard.
Oh, long black beard, I'm looking for the bird of happiness. Will you help me?
Yes, I will help you find the bird of happiness, but first, you must do a little favor for me. Go back to your village. You have a friend, Lusong, your best friend. Visit Lusong's house and kill his mother.
No, as I love my own mother, why would I kill another's? No, do with me as you please.
So be it. With those long black beard, the wind shot out and changed the path into a vast plain of jagged rocks, sharp like knives, 900 miles long, 900 miles wide. Still, Wanja traveled on, and on she walked, till her shoes were cut to shreds, till her clothes were tattered ribbons. She crossed that vast land of 900 miles, and then stopped to rest. Her ankles were bleeding, and she was hungry and weak, and she felt something, and suddenly a shadow loomed up from behind her with a long brown beard.
Oh, long brown beard, I am looking for the bird of happiness. Will you help me?
Yes, Wanja, I will help you find the bird of happiness, but first, a little favor for me. Go back to your village. You look so tired and hungry. Visit Lusong's house. Visit your neighbor, Old Man Silang's house. Steal his food and poison the rest.
No, as I love my own grandfather, why would I kill another's? No, do with me as you please.
So be it. And the wind shot out to his brown beard, snatched her food pouch and hurled the only food she had, swirling down into the depths of an endless abyss. And now Wanja was without food. Still, she walked and traveled till her belly yanked at her ribs. Hunger was like a knife stabbing from within, and weak from exhaustion and starvation, she stumbled into a snowy drift and felt something in the snow. It was long and soft and warm, and tugged on the long white beard of a hideous demon.
Oh, long brown beard, I am looking for the bird of happiness. Will you help me?
Yes, I am the long white beard. I will help you.
Whitebeard.
But first, a favor for me. Go back to your village. Yes, there's a beautiful lady, Lady Baima, with beautiful eyes. Gouge out her eyes and bring them back to me.
Oh, no, take mine instead.
So be it. The wind was so piercing cold. Wanja became blind. Stumbling, fumbling in a world of blackness, Wanja felt her way over the rocks, climbing over boulders, up the side of a mountain. The wind was whipping all around her, her wounds crusted with dry blood, weak from exhaustion, as that wind began draining her life, draining her life. And Wanja knew she was dying. But rather than let her last thoughts be of the failure to find the bird of happiness, Wanja summoned in her mind's eye the people in her life, and she saw the warm smile of her mother and her father, and she could feel their love for her right here. Then she began to see the others. Old man Silang, his neighbor Lusong and his mother, pretty Lady Baima, and Wanja felt her love for the people right here.
Oh, this is where happiness lives. I am ready to die now.
Suddenly, in the distance, a melody swirling on the breeze, circling closer, getting sweeter, and something landed lightly upon her shoulder. Your heart calls to me. What is it that you wish?
Oh, bird of happiness. Oh, I am dying now. But will you go to my people and sing your sweet song?
Well, the bird of happiness sang his sweetest song for Wanja, and the sweetness of that song seeped down deep into her soul, healing her wounds. The pain lifted. Tears of joy welled up in her eyes, and when she opened her eyes, she could see more clearly than ever before, for there before her was the most beautiful bird she had ever seen. The feathers glowing the colors of the rainbow, this bird began to glow brighter, and then the bird began to grow larger and brighter, and Wanja climbed upon the back of the mighty soaring bird, and up they soared, over the mountains, over the horizon, and soon they could see her village below amidst the barren land. What is it that you wish for your people?
Oh, I wish happiness for the people.
Well, the bird gave out 3 loud cries. The first cry, and the sun burst through the clouds, warming the valley below. And the second cry, and carpets of green swept across the land as flowers and trees bloomed in all directions. And the final cry, and crystal cool waters gurgled up between the cracks of dry mud holes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
The bird soared up, and then delivered Wanja to her home. Now the people in her village, they celebrated in grand abundance, and they were never hungry, they were never thirsty ever again. And they remembered the wisdom and the love of this young girl for the people. And they remembered also their sufferings and their blessings. But now their joy was now forever in their hearts. And that joy stayed with them here forever and ever and ever and a day, long after the bird had flown away.
All right.
Change in techno here, back into the room.
So, joy and happiness. So I thought what we could do is maybe have a few anecdotes from some of the storytellers in Asian American storytellers with in action, because these are folk tales and myths, and they're wonderful. But there are times in our lives when we have to, I think we need to see and hear how people in their own challenging times got through what they had to endure. So we are going to start with Megumi.
Hi. Thank you for the wonderful introductions by the way of stories. Yay. Can't be better than that. Here I am. In the late 1960s, the International Hotel in San Francisco's Chinatown housed low-income single Asian American men, mostly Filipinos, now elderly, who had labored in the grape and strawberry fields of California and other service jobs for decades. But the corporation that owned the building wanted to demolish it and therefore evict all the tenants. Housing activists, students, community members, and tenants united to protest and resist eviction. Holding hands on that final night, they surrounded the building. Nonetheless, the sheriff's officers on horses broke through and began to evict the elders. The building was demolished, but the lot remained empty for 30 years due to the bad public relations and image. This gave the community time to organize and raise enough money to purchase the lot and build another international hotel with a Filipino community in the art center on the first floor, Manila Town Center. The road was long, but the community won.
Eleanor. Where are you, Eleanor? Did you?
I'm mute.
Is Eleanor here?
Yes, I'm sorry, I was
okay.
muted. Okay. Hold on. Wait a second. Sorry, I lost myself here. Okay. All right. At the end of 1941, during World War II, the President of the United States began to imprison its own American citizens of Japanese descent. Over 120,000 Japanese Americans were rounded up and sent to desolate American incarceration camps to live in substandard barracks. Now, in one of these 10 camps, there was a Kamishibai man, a special Japanese storyteller who rode a bicycle from camp block to camp block to tell stories to the children. With a small wooden theater mounted on the back of his bicycle, he would clack two wooden clackers together to gather the children and announce himself, much like the ice cream truck's music gathers people here. Well, the children would gather around him, and he would use illustrations that were in the little theater to tell the stories, pulling out the pictures and telling the stories. Now, after he finished telling the stories, he would pull out a small drawer, also mounted on the bike, with candies. And sometimes in the winter, they would be hot sweet potatoes. And he would give those out to the children. Well, they delighted in having him come. He delighted the children, spreading joy for them and for himself, making imprisonment much more bearable.
Thank you, Eleanor. Toby? I think Toby is back.
I am back. Thank you guys. Woo. Now, in another camp, Camp Minidoka, My uncle was a teenager at that time, and he was the president of the speech and debate club for his high school. Well, he and the other high school students at this camp, they learned to express themselves in a very precise and convincing manner, all through speech and debate club. This also gave them the opportunity to share and convey their life circumstances and responses. And this helped them through the dark times of camp.
Thank you. Rupa.
The year was 1913. Kasturba Gandhi, the wife of Mahatma Gandhi, decided to join the freedom struggle in South Africa. She and 3 other women crossed a provincial border illegally, and they were all arrested and thrown into prison, 3 months of hard labor. But in that misery and oppression, they kept their spirits up by singing every morning and evening their beloved devotional Hindu songs. Kabhi Ram ban ke, kabhi Sham ban ke, chale aana, Prabhu ji chale aana.
Thank you. Thank you. Robert?
In the late 1979, and I was able to travel to the Philippines. And before going there, I was involved in a lot of political work, and I had a chance to get connected with activists in the Philippines, and that allowed me actually get on the inside under the guise of being a relative of a political detainee. Now, this was during the rule of the dictator Marcos, Ferdinand Marcos, who a very oppressive dictator. Thousands were killed and imprisoned, and this prison camp had both men and women in there. They were basically in tiger cages, so long bars, concrete floors. The men and women huddled together to when they needed to keep warm from the blast of rain or wind. So I went in as a cousin of one of the prisoners, and even though the situation looked pretty dire, and they didn't have a way of, there was no legal recourse, there was no way to know how long they'd be in there or if they would be tortured. But one way to kind of keep their spirits up is I looked on the floor of this concrete prison cage, is that they had gotten colored chalk, and on the ground of the floor of the cell, they drew an image of a storm and the waves and the wind, the dark clouds, and this boat had the men and women in a boat. They were obviously the prisoners who were trying to seek some way to survive on their journey. And even though they were in this dangerous situation, one of them was looking up in the sky. He had a bow and an arrow. The others were steadying his aim, and they were aiming at an eagle with red, white, and blue feathers. Clearly an American signal. For many decades, the Marcos dictatorship was sponsored, his military was funded by the US government. And the people, the People's Army and the Liberation Revolutionaries, they knew who was behind all this trouble. And so they kept up their spirits. I don't know if anything, what became of them after that, but we do know that the dictatorship did collapse, and they were able to have elections. And the story is that for a lot of us, in storms of darkness and dark times, as we may be entering now with this new regime coming in, we don't know what the future will be. But one thing that we do know is there are many, many examples of people pulling together in rough seas, in stormy times, and being clear of where we aim. And so I think for us as artists, we need to aim our creativity and our artists to bring hope and light into the world. And that's one way we will survive the darkest of storms.
Thank you. Thank you. So many, I'm sure many of you have other stories that are the same. People, when the time comes, you know, we do find our source of strength, and we do find our joy underneath the strength, because it's got to keep us going. So, Laura and Sara and any of you, if you'd like to say a last few words before we close off.
Well, I could say something. I so appreciate what you said, Robert. It just reminded me of being in the camps in Haiti, or post Katrina in New Orleans and other places where it's unimaginable. And yet there were these like pockets of explosive joy that had so much power to them. And I've been thinking a lot about that, and staying local, finding out in our neighborhoods, all of us, where we could tell stories, where we can create sanctuaries and food banks and things that may be needed. And also just bring people together. Like after 9/11, on the corner of my house was a church that I went out and I thought, oh God, they're going to do this religious singing, and the priests in full regalia were handing out little pieces of paper, and this enormous crowd of people. And the song I sang was New York, New York.
What a wonderful town.
And all these people had been so unhappy, the absurdity of it, that everybody just started laughing and hugging each other and running across the street where the stores were open and giving out food. And we literally had a party on Broadway.
Wow.
Great. Great.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, does it, really? Right? A one priest's decision to sing New York, New York, and they were absolutely, it was contagious. Yeah, and that's what we knew. We need to be contagious with joy.
Yeah.
Infectious joy.
I was also thinking small and thinking humor. I happened to be at my son's house in Charlottesville, Virginia, but my mom came from Virginia, and we tell this story about when I was a kid, my older sister had an interview at Duke, and then we went out to the western part of Virginia where my great uncle had a farm. We called him Uncle Doc. And we were from Albany, New York. And so the car was absolutely jammed full of formal stuff for my sister to wear at her college interview, and all the stuff. We've been at Virginia Beach for 2 weeks, and food, and our family dog, and 3 young girls and the parents. And we had this wonderful meal at my great aunt and uncle's. And my dad from Albany could not stop talking about the watermelon and how amazing. He'd never tasted watermelon like that. And my great uncle looked at the car and he said, "I'll give you a watermelon if you can fit it in." And my dad was so determined to bring that watermelon back home that he unpacked the entire car and he put the watermelon in first, and then he packed all around the watermelon, and he actually got it in. And then my great uncle said, "How about another watermelon?" So we can keep saying, "How about another watermelon?"
Yeah, watermelon saved the day.
Yeah, please, please, if you have something you want to share, please do raise your hand, and Sara, you can call on them.
It'd be great to hear a couple more thoughts or insights from any one of you who want to share even a few words, just a moment.
Or
Yeah.
even a wish for joy.
A wish
Yeah.
for joy?
We know that words are like magic.
Right. a wish, a context
Yes,
for
look,
Oh,
there's
Toby is
2025.
raising a physical hand.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks. I just feel radical joy. One of the words that comes to me is kindness. A couple of incidents that occurred to my mother during the war, and it all had to do with kindness. And for myself, when I was living overseas, oh, I was so angry about something that was happening to me. But it just took one person to say one thing, and it changed my whole attitude that my family and we ended up living in this country for 20 years.
Wow.
Otherwise, I was like, I want to go. But that one word of kindness just everything in a very radical way.
Thank you. Yes, the
Well,
radical
absolutely.
nature of kindness.
I
Laura, go
will
ahead.
wish that every single one of us goes out tomorrow and does something unexpectedly and outrageously kind.
Oh, lovely.
Unexpected situation.
Right. It's the last day of the year. So it's just the beginning of what we will carry into the new year.
Rupa, share with us your
Yeah,
thoughts.
I'm amazed at how, when like when I go back to India, I see like acute poverty, but people seem to be happy and joyful, and they get simple pleasures, from going to the temple or cooking a simple meal. And I have a lot to learn from such people because, we whine about, small problems, but yet there is so much joy amidst that misery and poverty. So,
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
You-
We saw that too when we were in India. All these tents and sheds that they live in a community of poverty, but the kids come out of their tents every morning. They're all shiny clean. Their clothes are clean, and they've got big smiles on their faces. It's really astonishing.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about even the concept of poverty and material poverty versus inner poverty and being impoverished inside or being extremely rich and joyful
Yeah.
and in touch with that. As I'm going to say her name wrong again, but Viva was reminding us at the very beginning how that
The
woman
Pono.
who, yeah, say it again.
Pono, that to be in rightness with the whatever's happening versus going into the misery of what's happening.
Yeah.
And if nobody wants to say it out loud, you can put it in the chat, Laura.
Just because I forgot about this amazing thing. When my son Ishmael first came from Sierra Leone, he had been a child soldier. He was invited to a luncheon and was very excited because Bill Clinton, who was president at the time, was going to be there. And I gave him my credit card so he could take a taxi up to this Park Avenue luncheon. So anyway, it turned out he was going to come back around 3 o'clock. He didn't come back till 8 o'clock at night because it wasn't just Bill Clinton. Seated next to Bill Clinton was Nelson Mandela. Robert De Niro, other people, but seeing Nelson Mandela, Ishmael was completely and utterly paralyzed. He said, I cut some of the food and I just stayed there with a piece of fish on a fork and the knife in the air, and I couldn't move. So Clinton, being kind, said to Ish, do you want to ask Nelson a question? And after the fury of being forced to be a child soldier and losing everything, he just blurted out and said to Nelson Mandela, why aren't you angry? And Nelson Mandela said to him, I was in prison for 32 years. And the most important thing I learned was that being attached to my anger was a waste of time.
Woo,
So anyway,
absolutely.
story is that why was Ishmael gone till 8 o'clock? He was so startled by all of this that he got in a taxi and the driver said, "Where do you want to go?" He said, "Just drive." But that story, I thought to myself, I was about to be angry because it was so expensive. But I thought the
Yes.
story was worth more than my credit card.
Wow. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We know another anecdote we heard of a man who was imprisoned in China. And he knew that if he sunk into that despair, that he really would be imprisoned in his own heart. So he opened up and started talking with the guards.
Yeah, but what he did was every day he cleaned every single inch of his cell, the ceiling, the walls, the floor, over and over again, because he knew that if he could show his cleanliness, that they guards could not treat him like he was an animal. And that absolutely did make the huge difference. They began to bring him newspapers, extra food, yes, conversations. He was a Jewish man who would spend many decades in China serving the people. And yet here, suddenly, with the change of regime, he was in prison for also at least a decade.
I do see that, Janet, you had your hand up. Is that right? Were you going to share something with us?
No, I pressed the wrong button.
Joyously, though.
I will mention that era on the floor behind me is a painting that's usually up on the wall that my son, was made by my aunt, and it's me as a child painting on an easel. And that was the woman who taught us painting. Was we were like 4 and 5 years old, and she had a separate easel for all of us, and she wanted to make sure the colors didn't all get brown, so she had the paint. There was a separate brush for each paint container, and her name was Madeline, and she would walk around. She was very short. She wasn't that much taller than all of us, and it was this magical place where she celebrated each of our visions. And I remember actually she did a exhibit, and a reporter came in and looked at my painting and said, "Why is there a turtle in the sky?" And I said, "That's the sun, but it's green." Madeline never questioned, if you wanted to make the sun green, make the sun green. And I thought, what an ignorant man this reporter is. He thinks there's a turtle in the sky. Madeline knew it was the sun. It just happened to be green. So that's what you're looking at behind me.
Yes, here's
No, you're just waiting.
Dean's. Yeah. Oh, okay.
thinking
Or did you want to speak? Yeah, okay.
That particular time, I was just waving, but I do have something that I would like to add.
Okay.
And it's really more so a question, just something to ponder when we talk about joy. It's something you can't hold, you can't contain it, you can't harness it. And then when you talk about radical joy, that's like exponentially more. So is it any wonder to any of us that the things that really spark radical joy, lasting joy, are intangible?
Right. Absolutely. It's not a thing. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the gold, the iron, the silver. It's like what she held inside her and her response to these things. Thank you.
Yes. It's my walking into a mall and seeing a friend that I haven't seen in 20 years. He's from clear across the country, and he's in Grapevine Mills Mall. And he saw me before I saw him. And he's trying to figure out how is he going to approach me without my screaming so loudly that I terrify everybody in the mall. And he failed because I just
The joy was explosive.
it was.
Yeah.
It was radical.
Yes. And the whole mall shook.
The whole mall shook.
I want to say that part of this this feeling of joy, it's also, I think it is enveloped in a cloud of what we as gratitude, and one way, you know, if you start thinking about gratitude, all the myriad of things to be grateful for, it lifts up your sense of who you are in this world and who has come to you in this world. The gifts, the ancestors, all this that we have been, even as horrible and as terrible things are happening in the world right now, that what can we do? Well, we can keep alive our humanity and be grateful, and then apply that power of gratitude and humanity to do what we can to whether it be with your neighbors or with your community or with political organizations, do what we can now, because it's ramping it up. This is why we wanted to use that word radical, because we can't just be softly happy. We need to like get at the root of this. We have to get at the root, like the word radical means at the root of who we are, our humanity.
So if there's nothing more, well, Megumi?
Wait just 1 minute, Nancy. Go ahead.
So part of the reason why I go into the prisons to work with residents there is there's such amazing joy in a place that I'm so prejudiced, right? It's like, okay, it's raining. These people are having to wear garbage bags as raincoats, or they had to sit in the yard for 5 hours because the COs were out and searching for something that wasn't there, that was a contraband in their dorms. And then they get to come in and they talk about these things and they seem so deprived. And yet when there's that human connection, we're sharing stories, there is radical joy. These are people whose families have forsaken them. They don't write letters anymore. They don't call. And, you know, some of them are grandparents who don't know their grandkids. And yet, when we are in the classroom and sharing stories, I see them as humans, and they feel, they felt seen. And so just their joy is so infectious that I get joyful, and we always end in such an amazing note every time. And so I'm kind of hooked on this. I go there for the joy part. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but I think I notice my own joy when I feel that connection. Thank you.
Well, if there are any other comments or
Because
observations?
Here's Viva.
Yeah, I just wanted to say another thing I got from the first story was somehow going through great suffering helps to open you to radical joy and surrendering to that suffering. And I know as human beings, we do everything we can to avoid the suffering. But, you know, whatever happens with a new regime, if we suffer because of it, on some level, we're going to be open to more radical joy. And so,
better be.
but just a reminder to also embrace the suffering, even though it's challenging, whatever suffering we may be going through. Just like that woman, she embraced so much suffering to stand up for herself. But in the end, she was open to the radical joy. So, and I'm getting that from the prisoners, you know, anybody who's in a suffering situation. Nelson Mandela, I also heard that he realized that if he kept hating these guards, it was going to destroy him inside. And so he treated the guards with love. And eventually they just couldn't be mean to him anymore. So yeah. So a good reminder about if we're facing suffering, to realize that it's got a blessing on some level.
Yeah.
And thank
Yeah.
you so much. I'm really glad I showed up today.
I am glad.
Wondering if Carol Wright put a story in the chat. Carol, is there any chance you would share it with us?
See the chat. Here we go.
Carol?
Carol, could you share it with us, or would you rather just have it in the chat?
Wow, that's a nice long story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carol, would you like one of us to read it?
Carol, did you step away from the screen?
She has ascended through radical joy.
Carol said yes, but I'm not sure what that means. Do you mean yes? Read it. Oh,
Yeah.
just keep it in the chat. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So everyone just saved it.
I want to. Can I say one other thing? Just as Viva was. We could read it. Was referencing the woman in my story. I also am thinking about the youngest brother in Laura's story and the importance of community. And as we go into this next period of our lives, and if we feel just overwhelmed and alone, to get the drums and bring people together. And I've heard that in cultures where material possessions aren't the way that they find joy, the way that the story moves is not about becoming wealthy and marrying the princess, but instead it begins with someone breaking a taboo and the community splits. And the happily ever after is when the community is healed again. And so I'm holding tight to that, and I offer it to you as well.
Yes, yes.
Thank you,
Yes,
Sarah.
we will need each other much more than usual. And it will bring us joy to be connected. And it must bring joy to our entire community for us to actually keep sourcing our joy. That is being radical in the face of evil.
Well, Laura asked if Carol wanted to read the story from the chat. I'm grateful to all of you for hanging here. And Carol did say, yes, please read it from the chat. So Laura, will you do that?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I have to scroll back up and find it. I'll do that. But I will, while I'm scrolling, one thing that really struck me in your story, Sarah, was that our attitude to misery, that it's what I did in prisons with teenagers was have them write the worst thing in the world and then write the exact opposite. Same thing with the girls in Haiti that I work with every week. I can't, somehow my scroller is not, here it goes. Okay, let me find it. Oops. Oh,
I'm looking at it actually. Should
I'm
I
looking at it too.
okay, why don't you read it?
Nancy, you read it.
All right, here it goes. A story that helped me through the many downs. Pianist Artur Rubinstein, in this book, My Youngest Years, was relating a time when he was on tour and being led up a volcano by guide, donkey, etc. The volcano exploded and the guide fled, leaving Artur in his donkey on the slopes. So you can imagine Rubinstein pausing as his guests are laughing at his tale. Rubinstein added, I didn't care what happened to me, actually, as long as it makes a better story later. Shortly after that, I got arrested for broken taillight, which morphed into a more severe issue, contemporary of court. Better story later. I had a blast. I'm not sure I got it.
That could be Carol talking.
And the first read, I think I probably put accents in the wrong place and pauses in the wrong place. But it's in the chat, and you can read it over and over and over again and get it. Yeah.
Well,
I say one last thing because what it reminded me of. An old woman that I knew sent me a magazine from Aramco oil company that featured Islamic cultural literature. And there was a story, I think I told this to you, Robert and Nancy, that a journalist was sent to Kazakhstan to collect epic stories. And he did. And then he said, I don't get this culture at all. Every story has an unhappy ending. What's the matter with them? Can't they have a happy ever after? And so he went to, actually it's a friend of mine, Almasa Almaty, who's a great bard, who tells like hour-long stories. And he complained to Almas and said, isn't there a happy story in Kazakhstan? And Almas said, well, there is only one. Once upon a time, there was a man. He lost everything. He went out in the desert and said, who cares?
Okay.
I'm going to invite everyone to just click again on the heart if you can find it in the reactions, and let's.
But Janet has her hand up.
Oh, Janet, do you have your hand up?
This time, yes, real.
Oh, this time, yes.
I wanted to follow up on the comment that it's very good for us to be in community in this time. And I think one of the benefits is you hear lots of different perspectives. And I know when I'm with friends, I'm not closed in on my own way of thinking. I can hear them and I can hear, oh, there's another way of looking at it. And so I like to share the story that I learned a long time ago about a couple whose child was murdered. And then the parents decide to forgive the murderer. When I first heard that story, I thought this is inconceivable. I cannot, because I have a daughter and I cannot conceive forgiving somebody who murders my daughter. And yet they did. I think it was called Ring of Tree or something. And so I think it's very important to hear different perspectives so that you can grow yourself, grow your heart. And so I appreciate very much having today's platform to share ourselves and share stories.
Thank you. Absolutely. This is what we wanted. Thank you. And you know what? I have a video to share with you of absolute joy that we need to see and hear. So, Brittany, can you share that video?
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh,
Isn't
my
it just
God.
the best? If we could have that joy, it would send us dancing and singing too, and which we have to do with each other as well.
And we have to move with joy together as those young children.
Yeah, as a community.
Make-believe instruments.
Yes.
All
Well,
the
I don't know. I don't know if they were made. I mean, they are made, but they
Pre-made.
might work. You know, they might really work for sure.
It really does work.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
Imagine it, it works.
Yes.
It was.
And so it also works for you to donate to us so that we can share some joy with our tellers. Yes. So, you know, the link again is in the chat. So thank you, everyone. Anyone have a last thing they want to say before we sign off and bring joy into the evening? Let's see. Maybe we can all stand up and dance.
Let's put that video back on and
Yeah.
dance. Yeah.
Put the video, Brittany, can you put that back on? We should all get up and
Yeah,
sing
sure
and
can.
dance with it. Here it goes. Brittany, are you still there? There you
Okay,
go.
1,
Okay,
2,
2,
3.
Navidad. Navidad. Oh, wonderful. And you can find it. I know Brittany could put it in the chat. So if you want to watch it over and over again, it's just magnificent. Yeah. And you can dance to it, you know, do the same movements and
Thank you so much, because this was such great fun and a wonderful way to, welcome the new year very soon.
very soon.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
We
Everyone
want to give
for
applause
coming.
for Brittany for helping us with the techno
Yes,
this time.
thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Brittany.
Brittany.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, all our tellers. Thank you for coming. It wouldn't have happened without you. It would have been a lonely presentation. We would have enjoyed it, but it would have been lonely.
Thank you.
So, all right.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
See you in the new year.
Thank you, Carol, for that story.
Yes.
Yes.
Good night.